everyone. Today we are canning jalapenos. If you're new here, my name is Leia and I do lots of canning and homesteading projects. We've got a big old garden out there. But today we are doing jalapenos. We are going to try candied jalapenos. Last year I did like just, what is it called? Like brined. They're just like a vinegar jalapeno in the fridge. I found an online ball recipe and I didn't print it, so I just wrote it here. It's very, very simple. I will link it below. And I am going to start simmering the brine mixture. Oh, I forgot my apple cider vinegar. Hang on. I need a lot of sugar, so I'm gonna measure out the sugar first, and then I'll do the apple cider vinegar in this scoop. So it's 4 cups of sugar. We have this sugar from Azure. It's a, it's not really refined. It's refined or whatever they do to make it white and perfect. So they're pretty coarse granules, but they will dissolve just fine. Oh gosh, was that 3 or 4? I think that was 3, but I'm not convinced. Okay, 1. I think that was 3. Okay. Okay, there's 4 of the sugar. I'm hoping this comes together really quickly today. I need to harvest our habaneros and our serranos and get those put up in the freezer rather, for when we have time to process them into hot sauce. So here's 1 cup, 2 cups, 3 cups. Next I'm going to add the salt, and it wants 2 tablespoons. I have a half, I'm sorry, it wants 2 teaspoons, and I have a half teaspoon here, so I'm just going to do that 4 times. And then it wants turmeric. Kind of excited. Hardly anything I cook calls for turmeric, and so I'm very glad to use up some turmeric. And mustard. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. It also calls for some cayenne pepper, a very small amount, but I don't think I have any cayenne pepper. I cook for a lot of little children, so I don't reach for cayenne pepper very often. And then it also needs garlic, so let's see. Let's hold off on these jalapenos. I'm gonna grab some garlic and get that chopped up for the brine. Okay, 6 cloves of garlic. Oh man, this is just normal store-bought garlic. The garlic we get from Azure is all frozen into pre-ground pucks right now. Some of this garlic is already going rotten. So there's 3, 4. Some of these cloves are really small. Okay, I'm gonna use that much. My husband took the children out of the house today so that I could do this uninterrupted. I don't mind being interrupted in canning very much anymore. Sort of gotten used to it. It can be a little frustrating sometimes, but when you're doing jalapenos, it's very hard because you have to put gloves on to chop the jalapenos, and then you have to take your gloves off and make sure nobody's getting spice on them. And it's just not a good one to involve the kids in. I suppose they could have helped make the brine, but most of this process is just chopping jalapenos. My 6-year-old is starting to get pretty handy with a knife. He helped me with some tomatoes the other day, but I have these like cheap plastic gloves to wear, and they actually make cutting really difficult, and I didn't want him to do that. Not yet, anyway. Normally if I'm peeling garlic, I just take the side of the knife and crush it to get the peels off, but the recipe wants this to be like sliced into slivers, so that's what we're going for here. All right, I'm just gonna add this to the pot behind me. And now for the jalapenos. I'm gonna get these on, and I'm gonna get a little bowl to put the scraps in, because they can go to the chickens when we're done. I think one of the coolest things about chickens is they cannot taste, what is it, capsaicin? The thing that makes peppers spicy does not affect chickens. Oh, these gloves drive me nuts. One year I tried to do it without the gloves, and oops, wrong bowl. And I am a contacts wearer, and I thought that I had scrubbed my hands so well. And then I went to take my contacts out that evening, and I got jalapeno in my eye, and that hurt so bad. So it is worth the gloves. Also, I can already smell the heat on these. They are definitely spicy. Some of these are just little guys, because I really wanted to be done with the plants in there. We need to start getting the garden ready for fall and getting the grass out of there. So in a couple videos ago, I pulled out our jalapeno plants, all except for one, just in case I need some for a salsa recipe or something later on. But we picked most of them. Oh, and some of them are even, not very many. A lot of the yellow ones were very, very blemished. Probably because they've been on the plant the longest. So I gave a lot of them to the chickens, but there are a few that survived. All right, well, I have 4 pounds of these to cut up, so I'm going to chop these up, and then I will be back to hang out with you all. All right, this is simmering. I'm going to turn it down. And I got all of these beautiful jalapenos chopped up, which is great because my one little guy that was left home to nap is refusing to nap. So I'm glad I've got the chopping done. And I'm just going to add this all in here. I'm gonna try not to touch it too much because I don't have my gloves on anymore. I'm skeptical that this is enough brine. Okay, let me put this in the sink and then we'll stir it. Oh, well, it says to simmer it for 15 minutes. So maybe some of it will shrink down. Okay, let's see what happens. This is just about at a simmer, and as you can see, it has already shrunk down a lot. So I'm not as nervous now. Worst case, if I need more brine, I think I will make up just a little bit more of the ACV and sugar mixture, because sugar is actually a preservative. So between the vinegar and the sugar, I think those are the 2 parts of the recipe that are the safety component, if that makes sense. I've been working on learning how to, what things in a canning recipe can you safely adjust. And for something like this, I do think that if I have to add a brine, I could just do the vinegar and sugar and top it off a little bit more. It's a weird ratio though, 3 cups of vinegar to 4 cups of sugar, so we'll have to do some math. All right, we are officially at a simmer. I am gonna reduce it just a little bit because it said to simmer it on kind of a lower setting. Woo, I just got a whiff of that. That steam with the vinegar and the spice, wow. It'll clear your sinuses. Anyway, this is supposed to go for 15 minutes. I don't remember what the full recipe said, but I think I'm gonna put a lid on so I don't lose any more of that precious brine. And I am gonna turn it down even more since this will make it simmer harder. While that is simmering, I'm going through some of my old lids. We recently bought a bunch of new ball jars, which I don't always do. I often get jars with no lids from Azure Standard because you don't need all of these bands, but we did have to get some from a local store recently, and all they have is the ball with the lids. And it's actually kind of nice to do every once in a while because some of these lids are just, Casey, they're just gross. I find that when I can beans, I get a lot of siphoning, and that really makes my lids get old very fast. So yeah, like some lids like this. It'll be nice to get rid of these. If you cannot pick your jar up by the lid, just the ring, not the ring, what am I trying to say? Just the circle lid, then it's not properly sealed. So the bands all come off before it goes on the shelf. So you really only need a small amount of bands around anyway. And now it's time to put everything in the jars. I'm just gonna put these in half pints because I don't think we're going to use very much at once. And I'm just gonna ladle them in and pay attention to headspace and make sure that every jar has a good amount of brine. When I heat up my jars, I know a lot of recipes call for you to put the jar into the water bath canner empty first to heat up, and then you can take it out. But I prefer to put mine in the sink with hot water, and our hot water heater is very hot. Like, you can't put your hand in that water comfortably. So I just let them soak in the sink in the very, very hot water, and I have never had a problem. And I find that to be a little bit more convenient than trying to put it in the canner to heat up. This made way more than I expected, but I guess it makes sense for 4 pounds of jalapenos. So I have 11 half pints. And I'm just going to use a little bit of vinegar to clean off the rims. Then we're gonna get them in the canner. All right, I have hot water here. This is going to be water bath canned. And then I'm going to top it off with water. Set to cover it by at least an inch. And then this is just my normal pressure canner, and I'm not pressure canning, but I am just gonna get the lid on there like that and let it come up to temp. All right, so they processed for 15 minutes in the water bath canner, and it is actually the next day. So as you can see here, I've taken the rings off and they are all tight. You should be able to lift it by the lid. One thing I want to point out is as soon as the time is done on the water bath canner, I am always really careful to bring it down to temperature slowly. So you take the lid off and you let it just sit there for 5 minutes with no heat on, and then sometimes you can even leave it longer if you're, if you're busy. There's no rush. And then I always lift it out onto a soft surface. Online, there is unfortunately a video going around of a woman who took her can out of her pressure canner and she set it down on a cold metal tray, and the temperature difference, unfortunately, it seems like it caused her jar to explode. Like hot tomato sauce all over her, and it's a really sad video. So I just want to point out that it's always good to put it onto a soft, neutral kind of surface like this. And then I always put a towel over it to put it to bed, and I leave it alone for 12 hours. Since it is the next day, I've gone ahead and taken the rings off and labeled them. So I always just do the month and the year of, when I did this. So hopefully they are tasty. I've read that these have to sit for 12 weeks or so for the best flavor, so we'll just leave them alone for a while. All right, so here are my habaneros. We have a mix of green and orange on here, and some of the orange ones are starting to rot, and these plants have also been knocked over, so I'm gonna come through and pull them all out, and we're gonna take them over to the patio in the shade there, and we are going to pick everything. We definitely grew way too many hot peppers. I didn't think they were all gonna take, in my defense. I really had way more success with seed starting than I ever thought would happen, and then the seedlings also pretty much all took in the garden. So we are trying to convince everybody in our life to take some habaneros from us, pretty please, and next year I will grow less. Anyway, thank you all so much for joining, and I will see you all in the next video. Bye-bye.